Aluna, we're on 22A1, about to start the Mishnah on top. So just as a reminder, because the rest of this parak to the end and going into the next parak is going to continue to discuss about the witnesses that need to come forward that they saw the new moon. And the new moon essentially gives birth, as it were, becomes visible again, starts becoming visible at 29 and a half days on a lunar calendar each month. But of course, if that happens by day, you can't see the moon. So the point here is there's two possibilities for every Jewish month. The Jewish month, Rosh Chodesh, will either be the 30th day. In other words, the Jewish month will only be 29 days, and day 30 will be the new Chodesh, the new month. Or no, automatically the old month will be 30 days, and automatically, I'm underlining these words, the 31st day, by definition, becomes the new month. Because a Jewish month can never be more than 30 days. It could be 29 days, it could be 30 days. If it's only 29 days, it's because somebody saw the moon and came to testify that the 30th day, in fact, is the new month. If nobody came to testify, then automatically the 31st day automatically becomes the new month, because it can't be any other way. This will have ramifications on whether the witnesses are allowed to be mechalel Shabbos. Are they allowed to break the Shabbos in order to come witness? And in these witnesses, are these true witnesses like we would have in a court, which would mean, for an example, that relatives cannot testify together? Is that true with regard to the testify regarding the new moon or not? So let's start over here with our Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Abu Binai, a father and a son, Sharoas a Chaydish, who see the new moon, Yelchu, do go together to Bezdin. Loishim et starpim zeh and zeh, not because they may join with the other to give testimony, because a father and a son cannot testify together. Eloshim yipsol echad mehem yistaref hasheni acher. That if one of them becomes disqualified, the other one can join with another witness that shows up that's not related and go ahead and testify regarding the moon. Rav Shimon Aimer, Avu B'nai V'chol HaKroivim Kisherim Le'edus HaChaydish. A father and his son, as well as all relatives that normally would be not allowed to testify together, when it comes to the new moon, they are allowed to testify. This is not like your regular case, says Rav Shimon, of a monetary or capital case, a regular legal case. This is a spiritual case of, did you see the moon, did you not see the moon? And if they're related, even though normally we say they're not good witnesses, here they would be good witnesses. Amar Rabbi Yossi, says Rabbi Yossi, Maisa, there was a story with Tovia Raifu, with Tovia the doctor. Sharoes HaChodesh b'Yerushalayim hu u'v'noi v'abdoi mishuchara. He saw the moon in Yerushalayim together with his son and a freed slave. The Kiblu HaKahanim, and the Kahanim, that means the people who are accepting the edus, accepting the witnesses, they were Mekabel Oisav Yespinoi. They accepted it from him and his son as witnesses. So they accepted a father and son together as witnesses regarding the moon. Were pasru as abdai, but disqualified the slave, even though the slave was shachro, even though the slave is freed, and an Ebed Kenani, a Gentile Ebed that gets freed, automatically becomes a full-fledged Jew. However, when they came before Bezdin, not the Kahanim, but they came before Bezdin, Kiblu Oisa v'Etz Abdai. In fact, the Bezdin accepted him and his slave, but Upasla as Benoi, and disqualified his son, because they said a father and his son, relatives, cannot testify together. On the contrary, he and his former slave, who's now a full-fledged Jew, make up a better make up a better set of witnesses. So what's going on with all these opinions? Amr says the Gemara, Amr Rebbe Levi, my Talmud Reb Shimon. What is the reason that Reb Shimon says that related people can testify for the moon, as opposed to any other testifying, which of course does not allow relatives to testify together? Diksiv, because it says regarding the kedushas of the Chodesh, of the sanctification of the new moon. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe ve'el be'eretz Mitzrayim le'imor hachodesh hazeh lochem. And Hashem said to Moshe and Aaron in Mitzrayim, saying, "This month shall be for you. Eides zu shetehei keshera bochem." Shimon says it means a testimony of the new moon that is valid through you. Moshe and Aaron were brothers, and the pasuk is saying that even brothers can testify and through them sanctify the new Chodesh. So you see, brothers, relatives are acceptable as witnesses when it comes to testifying about the new moon. The Rabbanon, and the Rabbanon say, no, this testimony is placed under your jurisdiction, that in fact, the sanctification of the new month is in the hands of the Gedolei Hadar, the greatest of the generation. The Rambam writes those words, that it is only the Gedolei Hadar, the greatest of the great, that can accept testimony and sanctify the month. And the reason for that is again, the calendar is paramount to Jewish life. And so only the Gedolei Hadar, the greatest of the great in every generation, are the only ones who could sanctify the month. Obviously, this is before the calendar was established. So, the Rabban, according to the Rabban, the pasuk is not coming to allow us to have relatives testify together with regard to the new moon. We're now on 22a2. 22a2. Amar Rabbi Yosi, Maise b'Tovia Harayv. There was a Maise with the Rebbe Tovia, and he came, him and his son and the freed slave. The Kahanim accepted him and his son and not this freed slave, but Bezdin accepted him and the slave and not his son. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Chanan bar Rava, Hahilchas Reb Shimon. The halacha is like Reb Shimon, that relatives could be accepted as witnesses. What are you talking about? Rabbi Yosi Maisa. Rabbi Yosi brings a story. And you're saying the halachas of Reb Shimon. The Maisa ends up, the story ends up that the Chachamim, Bezdin, the court, actually accepted only testimony from him, his freed slave, and not his son. In fact, the Bezdin is saying that a father and a son, relatives, cannot testify regarding the new moon. So what are you saying like Reb Shimon, who says it? We have a story that clearly shows the court does not do it that way. Amalai, he said to him, Reb Shimon. But many times I said before Rab that the halacha is like Reb Shimon. And he didn't say anything to me. So Rav Huna said, you're making a mistake. He asked him the question. Amalei, hey Chitonis, how did you cite the Mishnah? How did you attribute the opinions between Rav Shimon and Rav Yosi? Did you say it the way we have it, that Rav Shimon allows relatives to testify even regarding the new moon, and Rav Yosi does not? Or did you switch the Shitas and say it was Rabbi Yosi that allowed the relatives to testify, and Rabbi Shimon says no? Amalei said, you're right. Ipcha, I switched it around. You're right. I said that the relatives may testify as according to Rabbi Yosi, and that they may not according to Rabbi Shimon. So Amalei, so then Rabbi Huna said, that's why Rab didn't say anything to you, because he actually accepted the idea that relatives are ineligible. You just said it from the wrong person. Therefore, Amar Tavi Bereder Maroni Tavi Amar Mar Ukva Amar Shmuel Ilchasa Reb Shimon. The halacha is like Reb Shimon, that relatives are eligible to testify regarding the new moon. Okay? However, if you look on the side of the Gemara, I'll teach you guys something. Look at the Hebrew side, the right hand corner on top, the top right hand corner. You see there's something called Mesiris Hashas. This is where they sort of either bring places where other places in Shas, it's what do you call it? Other places in Shas, it's just give me a second. It's other places in. Just give me 1 second. Other places in Shas that where it's brought. But here I'm looking. Just give me 1 second. Take a look at the bays. The second bays over there in the top right hand corner. You see it as an olive bays. It says over there, Sarach Oimer Ein. You're supposed to put in the words Ein Hilchasa ki Reb Shimon. That the halacha is not like Reb Shimon. So in fact, for some reason along the way, as the Gemara was prescribed, the word Ein fell out. And so the Messiah Sashas tells us put in the word Ein. And in fact, if you take a look at number 23 on the bottom, it says the Rishonim, that would be Rabbeinu Hananel, the Rambam, the Meiri, all rule that the halacha is not like Reb Shimon. A gloss on the Gemara page adds the word Ein before the words Hilchasa ki Reb Shimon, reversing the Gemara's ruling according to the Rishonim. So in fact, it is pretty clear that the Rambam had it in his version, Ein halacha ki Reb Shimon. So anyways, that's the halacha. We do not hold that relatives can testify even for the moon. And we say the rule of witnesses is across the board, that relatives cannot testify. Good. Says the Mishnah further. Okay? Now, Minat Torah, okay, a robber, a thief, cannot testify. The pasuk, if you take a look in the article before the Mishnah in its introduction, says, Al toshes yodchem rasha liyas eid chamas. Do not place your hand with a wicked man to be a thieving witness. So they're not allowed to be witnesses. Now, however, there are cases where people take money that's not rightly theirs. But in the taking of their money, the person giving them the money does it willingly. So in reality, it's not a thieving in reality. Minat Torah, that biblically, that wouldn't be a problem to preclude this person from giving witness. The Rabbanan, rabbinically, they said, even in such cases where the money is being given to you willingly, but in reality, it's not proper for you to take the money, you still can't do witnessing. I will not accept your testimony. What are those cases rabbinically? Elu hein psulin. These are the witnesses that are ineligible to testify regarding seeing the new moon. And we start off right away with gambling. Hamesachek bikuvio, one who plays with dice. So, in other words, what's wrong with a gambler? The problem with playing cards, playing with dice, is even if the one loses the round, right, loses his hand, and thereby gives over the money to the banker, gives over the money to the one who won, to the house. Even though you willingly give over the money, the Gemara has a yesod called asmachta loy kanya. An asmachta means when a person goes to play cards, play the slots, he bets. He does not expect to lose. Because if he expected to lose, he wouldn't have gambled in the first place. You only gamble to win. You don't gamble to lose. So your mindset was never that this was a transaction. You never had a thought that you would have.
I just want to add something to that. You're absolutely right. Rabbi Abraham Tversky, Oliver Shalom, which I was very, very close with, helping many, many people during his lifetime that I've worked with him, said the worst addiction, worse than alcohol, worse than alcohol or drugs, is the addiction of gambling. Because
Right.
our highs are highs, and the lows, even at the lowest that they are, they still think they're going to win.
Right. Very well put. So, exactly as Jerry just said it, and yes, I've seen this from Rabbi Tversky, in fact, that no gambler ever gambled because he thought he was going to lose. You only gamble because you think you're going to win. So when you lose and you have to pay out, there's no way that anybody is paying out with a full heart. This is called an asmachta, on an assumption. Asmachta means I'm soymech, I'm relying on an assumption that I'm going to win, like Kanye. That's not a transaction. That is not a kinyan. That is not something in which I can give something away. So the Gemara says, even though you're willingly, at the end of the day, giving up your money, but internally you're not. The proof is that you're going to turn around and gamble again. So asmachta like Kanye. That is not you taking money in a game of chance. Is not stealing, but in fact, it's not correct. Because the guy you're taking the money from, in reality, never went into this thinking that he'd have to give up his money. So that's called an asmachta loy kanya. And that is why, though there is the tradition to play cards, kivitloch, on Hanukkah, the Oirach HaShulchan writes terrible on those who do that tradition. Because of this, asmachta loy kanya. Further, umalva beribis, one who lends money with ribis. So again, on the one hand, it's not stealing in the sense of stealing, because the guy you lent money to willingly pays you back the principal plus the interest you're charging. We're clearly, by the way, talking about a case where there was no heter iska. No heter iska was put into place. A heter iska was put into place, as we'll learn later on in Shas. There came a time when nobody was lending money to other people. Because, frankly, when you lend money to other people, you only have risk that you won't come back, and you have no profit, right? You can't make interest. So the Chazal came up with a way called the heter iska. The heter iska essentially changes the loan into a business transaction. In a very convoluted way, it says, I'm not lending you the money, I'm going into business with you. And the interest that you're going to pay me is not interest, it's the profit from the business that we're going into. Nonetheless, it's not the greatest thing in the world. That's how all hard money loan, the people in the hard money loan business rely, by using heter iskas. But this case, of course, is talking about without the heter isker. And the milui beribis is, even though the person paying you back your interest willingly does it because he knew that he borrowed the money with this understanding, nonetheless, you're not allowed to do it, says the Chazal, says the Rabbanon, we're not accepting you as a witness. Or further, umafriche yoinim, dove racers. Dove racers, this is not you playing cards. This is racing. This is dog racing, horse racing, bird racing. It's again the same problem of asmachta like Tanya. There's a secondary problem that they also did doves, and they raced them in such a way that they would come to other dove coats, and essentially the birds would steal birds from other people's dove coats. and then bring them back to their dovecotes. So either way, it's not good. Now we're up to 2283. 2283. V'soichre Shavias and Shavias merchants. As you know, in the seventh year is Shemitah this year. Everything in the fields are free and clear. Anybody's allowed to go into it. So in reality, you're not really supposed to be gathering stuff in the fields and then start selling it. Now, Minat Torah, this is not perfectly clear. Maybe you are. The Torah says it's all open. You can certainly gather up the stuff, right, on the fields and then theoretically sell it. The Rabbanan said absolutely not. The prohibition, you're being novel b'shus Torah. With the permission of the Torah, you're acting wrong. Because obviously the Torah really doesn't want you to go ahead into business with the Shvi'ah stuff. You may be allowed to gather it in from the fields and then turn around and sell it, maybe, but we don't want you to do it. And va'avod, and slaves, Gentile slaves owned by Jews, are biblically ineligible to testify, which is a little hard to understand, because an Eved Kanani, when he is bought by a Jew, automatically gets a bris milah and takes on the mitzvahs, the positive commandments that women are responsible for. The mitzvahs say shaloi zaman grama, the positive commandments that are not time-based, the same ones that the women are mechuyev, are obligated to, so too is an Eved Kanani. And the answer over here, of course, then is, it's that women are not acceptable for witnesses. Since the women are not acceptable for witnesses, by definition, the one called the Eved Kanani is not acceptable for witnesses. Zeh haklal, and that's what the Mishnah says. Kol edu she'ema isha k'sheirula, any testimony in which a woman is ineligible to offer, so too, the Eved Kanani, who is a Jew on the same level as a woman, with regard to the mitzvahs that he has to keep, is ineligible to offer. Now, you'll notice the words, any testimony which a woman is ineligible to. So, if you look at number 31 on the bottom, look at 31 on the bottom, okay, in the middle of the paragraph. Women are accepted as witnesses with regard to testimony that a man had died, therefore enabling his wife to remarry. Women are also eligible to testify with regard to Saita, a woman suspected of adultery. If a single witness testifies that she did in fact commit adultery, the procedure of the drinking bitter waters is not performed. Such a witness is allowed to be a woman. In fact, we all learn that Eid Echad is Nemon v'Yisurin. One witness is accepted with regard to forbidden situations. We learn this out from women. Because as you know, when a woman menstruates, right, when she's a nidor, after the seventh day, she goes to the mikvah. She has to go to the mikvah, right? Family purity. How do you know she went to the mikvah? You weren't there. How do you know she went to the mikvah? So in fact, when the woman comes home, the husband has to ask her, did you toivel in the mikvah? Did you go into the mikvah? And she says, yes, I went into the mikvah. She testifies on herself that she went to the mikvah. And the testimony is accepted, and now they're allowed to be together. That's how we learn Eid Echad is never be Yisrael, from women, in fact. So, you're going to ask the question, because I've seen Jeff is from San Francisco, and he's a big feminist. So why aren't women accepted? Why aren't women accepted in monetary and capital cases? And the answer to that is, first of all, there are psukim and everything else. But on a logical basis, it's not that they're not capable. The Gemara in many places says, Noshim datim kalasu. Women have weak minds, in the simple in the simple definition of that. Now, that's obviously not the case, and that's not what the Gemara means. Meaning like this, women are emotional. That's their great strength. They are the emotional strength of the world. When they see a case, they don't look at the case just black and white, the mere facts. Women, by their very nature, have to add in the emotional component. There are many cases in the Gemara where you see the Gemara just has crazy cases just to prove a point. I use always the example, the Gemara later on, not when we get to those Masechtas, will bring a case of an animal who died and the fetus rolls out of it and rolls into the stomach of another animal. You hear the case? The case is impossible. Okay? Again, it rolls out of one mother's stomach and rolls into another mother's stomach. It's not possible. But the Gemara brings the case because Gemara there is trying to prove a theory, a legal theory. And it says, as is always the case, if the legal theory is correct, then no matter what case I find, the theory should still stand. If the theory does not stand, no matter how far-fetched the case I have, by definition, the theory is not proven completely. And therefore, I can't say that that's the halakha. I remember once telling this to my wife, and my wife just stopped. What kind of crazy case is this? What are you guys learning over there? Animal flows out of this and flows out of that. I said, Rachel, it's not the case. It's the point of the case. She got stuck on the case. She got stuck on it's not, what are you doing? That is the difference. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. That's why the great danger today of the mixing of the roles between men and women is not beneficial to anybody, because the world was never set up that way. Everybody is equal in the roles that they're set to do, in the roles that they're supposed to do. There are things that men do, but they can't do as women. There are things that women do that don't do. Anybody who's in a Jewish household knows that the women rule the house. And we're better off for it. It's the way it is. Chazal understood, and the Torah understood, that when it came to the law and testimony, you have to see it with blinders. The mitigating circumstances we discuss after the judgment is given. Then we can discuss the mitigating circumstances.
Yes, sir. I just want to introduce you something.
Yep.
I have found again, maybe a women. I have a wife that's obviously a business person as well.
Right.
Every time she has told me, do not get involved in this particular business situation, she was 150% right, because we as men get involved into our boastfulness, into our ego, etc. And I believe that the women, again, you can go to Jeff, see what Jeff has to say. But I will tell you, 100% of the time that I got involved in businesses or was not involved but looked into it years ago. Let me just give you an example, short example. We have a new neighbor by us, just moved into Harrow Court.
Right.
A guy by the name of Morty Weissman.
Okay.
Morty, I did catering for in the 1980s. Morty later on was found out the name of his company was called Other People's Money, OPM. He said, don't get involved with him. I did not get involved with him. The story is there. And there are other things that went on. So I have a little problem with the Gemara, a little problem.
No, so you see, on the contrary, that proves the Gemara. I could tell you the same thing, that I would not invest in anything or go into anything if my wife says no. Because what they can do is on an emotional level. You see, we too often get stuck in the weeds. We see the numbers, we see the project, we analyze its cost analysis, we do a cost analysis, we do what he called, does 1 + 1 = 2? They understand on a much deeper level that you're not investing in things or in the numbers, you're investing with people. They see the emotional side of every deal. They see the depths. It's called, the Gemara calls it a Bina Yisera. Women are given a Bina Yisera. You'll notice the words, Jerry.
Sixth sense.
Right, but the Gemara's words are, listen to this. Bina Yisera, a Bina means understanding, a greater understanding. Noshim datim kalos. Their das is kalos. Because it's a Bina Yisera. It's not a contradiction. The Gemara says, of course they have a Bina Yisera. That Bina Yisera, and again, it's talking globally. That Bina Yisera, right, which is always there. That's why, what do we say? Shema b'ni, hear my son, Musar Avicha, the admonitions of your father, Va'al titaish, and don't forget, Torah simecha, the Torah of your mother. Even though it should be just the opposite. The answer is no. It's the emotional growth that a child does by his mother's love that carries him forward.
Yeah, Yitzhak, just to reinforce what you're both saying, we used to call it intuition. There was something the women had. It was an intuition, whether it was business or other type of matters, that it was, they just approached it from a different standpoint. They saw something different than what the men would see.
And it's always an emotional side, the heart of the matter. Exactly. That's the Bina Yisera, the greater understanding. They have a greater understanding of human nature. The law is blind. The law wears a handkerchief over its eyes. Human nature is not allowed to be taken into account when it comes to the law. Only the facts, the cold facts. When do we deal with the mitigating circumstances, the emotions? Only after the judgment is given. In a capital case, then we say, okay, does anybody have any mitigating circumstances? Exactly what we're saying here. The strength of men is that we just see the numbers. We see the numbers. We see the bridge, right? We see the world in many ways black and white, with numbers, with things. We get our reports. We look at them. We analyze them. Great. We're good in math, right? That's the way it goes. We miss the poetry. They are the poets of the world. That's the truth. They have the flavor of the world. There is no question about it. They keep us grounded. The Gemara calls it a Bina Yisera. So how does that mean Noshim Datim Kalas? The Noshim are Datim Kalas because they have a Bina Yisera. Because their great strength is, as way Jerry just said it, that they see beyond the numbers. They see the people. Who are the people? What's going on? Are they trustworthy? Is a handshake a handshake? Is a word a word? They have an intuition, as you put it. But that intuition, guess what, is not acceptable in court. It's blind. Only the facts. And the women would say, what do you mean the facts? There's the facts and then there's the circumstances. How could you not take into account the circumstances? So I'll give you the perfect example. You all remember the story of Robin Hood, right? That at the beginning, they were starving, so they were capturing deer in the king's property, right? And they were all being captured and thrown into jail and the whole thing. And everybody said, but they're starving. What were they supposed to do? But legally, even by Jewish law, was the poor person allowed to go into and take a rich man's sheep just because he's starving? No. It's called stealing. It's called stealing. You're not allowed to go into a rich man's pen and take one of his sheep because you're starving. It's still called stealing. Now, you ask any woman and she's going to tell you that's ridiculous. The rich man's got 100 sheep. This poor guy is starving. He's got to put food on his table. Yes, he shouldn't have taken it. Of course he should have, but look at the circumstances. Testimony doesn't look at circumstances. Testimony looks at the cold facts. That's male. The circumstances are are women. And thank God for that. Jerry, you heard what I'm saying? Jerry, you understand what the Gemara?
I hear every single word.
Right? You understand what I'm trying to say? If you think about it, that's, again, it's not on a case by case. We're talking globally. Globally, when the Gemara talks like this, that Noshim Datam Kalas, but Noshim Bino Yisera, right? What does that mean? The answer is one and the other both flow together. The reality is, and the Gemara, by the way, brings this case. Many will bring this case later on in the other Maseh, the Baba Kamas, of the case of the poor man stealing a sheep from a rich man. And the thing is, the poor man has to, we got a problem. Because on the one hand, he's guilty. He's guilty, he's a thief. Now, what do we do with the circumstances? But the circumstances in no way impact the fact that he's guilty. Even though the circumstances clearly cry out, that's ridiculous. But that's not the way law works. Law doesn't work that way. And in there, that's the differences. Anyways, let's go further. Says the Gemara. Ha'isha, I knew this Gemara was going to be problematic. Before I began. Ha'isha kesheirala. Oh, by the way, one other thing. What the Gemara is very, very important. The Gemara was written by men, for men. Let me repeat that. The Gemara was written by men, for men. So you don't
Jeffrey, I just want to let you know, he's not screaming this part out. He's making sure that Rachel does not hear this.
That's right. My wife is downstairs. Exactly. So, in other words, not everything that we learn do you have to come home and repeat at home. Got it? Good. Okay. Very good. It says the Gemara.
I wish you told me that before we started.
So the Gemara says, but where women are eligible, they are also eligible. And where are women eligible? In the case of Isurin, in the case of testimony that a man died so that his wife could remarry, or in the case of Isaita, etc., or in the case of, like I said, I went to the mikvah. So go to a Eved Kenani who has the Dina Ki'isha. A Gentile slave is a Jew on the woman's level, full-fledged Jew on the woman's level. Amar Rav Ashi, Zai Saimeres, therefore we infer, Goizel Gazlon B'dibrayim Kesherim Le'edus Isha. A robber on the rabbinical level is eligible to testify with regard to allowing a woman to remarry. Just like the women could testify, they could testify. Obviously, a biblical robber, one who steals blatantly, are much more suspect, and they cannot testify in any cases, right? But in a case where it's only rabbinical, we allow you to testify just like a woman is allowed to testify, etc. Now the parak ends just with the Mishnah with no Gemara. Concerning one who sees the new month but is unable to walk to Bezdin. Feet hurt him. You can even drive him. You can bring him on a donkey, even on Shabbos. You could even carry him on your shoulders in a bed, which means not just the guy who's testifying could be Mechalel Shabbos, to profane the Shabbos, but in fact, even people on the outside can lift him up and carry him and bring him to testify. And if they're afraid that an ambush awaits them, because the Sadducees and the Vaitusim, who we talked about, who only believe in the written Torah and not the oral Torah, and therefore, when it came to bringing the Omer, if you remember, the Omer is brought on the 16th of Nisan, the second day of Pesach, which when they bring the Omer, it allows you to use Chodesh, allows you to start using the new grains. The Torah doesn't say specifically on the 16th of Nisan. It says, Mimocharas HaShabbos, on the morning after the Shabbos. So guess what they learned? They learned it exactly the way it says it. They learned that means the Omer must always be brought on a Sunday. Must always be brought on a Sunday. So they were always looking for ways. When Pesach was the first day of Pesach did not fall out on Shabbos, they were always looking for ways to make the first day of Pesach fall out on Shabbos, so that their belief that the Omer should be brought not on the 16th, but in fact on the first Sunday after Pesach would fall out this next also on the 16th of Nisan. How did they do this? By playing around with the month and making it either a 29-day month or a 30-day month in order to make it all work out for them. So, of course, they would falsify the witnesses, as we're going to see a little further along. Okay? So it goes like this. If we were afraid that they were going to get ambushed, loichim biyada maklos, you can arm yourself with sticks. And Yerushalayim, where Besdin was so very far away, loichim biyada mezainis, you could take food. Because a journey of a night and a day, the witnesses are allowed to desecrate the Shabbos and go forth to testify about the new moon. But that means only when they could arrive before Shabbos ends. Because that means they're traveling on day 30. And they're coming to tell Besdin that in fact this day 30 is already part of the new month. Because if they get there on the nighttime, Motzei Shabbos, it's already the 31st. And the 31st automatically becomes Rosh Chodesh. If the 30th isn't Rosh Chodesh, the 31st day must be the new month. Because we never have a Jewish month longer than 30 days. Shenema, because it says, these are the appointed times of Hashem for the Yom Tovim, which he shall declare in their fixed time. And as I explained the other day, that because Pesach, it says, B'chodesh ha'aviv, in the month of spring, it means that Pesach must always be after March 21st, after the spring solstice. And that is there, so the months have to shift, as opposed to Ramadan, which moves around the calendar. Sometimes it's in the spring, sometimes it's in the winter, sometimes it's in the fall, sometimes it's in the summer, because they never adjust the lunar calendar to the solar calendar. We must do that because Pesach must be in the spring. Very good. Hadin Allah Arba Rosh Hashanah, Hadin Allah Arba Rosh Hashanah, Hadin Allah Arba Rosh Hashanah. Very good. We now begin the next paragraph. We are now in 22A4. Okay, 22A4. We got about 15 more minutes. Here we go. Im Einon Makirin Oisai. If the members of the Sanhedrin who will accept the testimony do not know the witnesses are completely unknown to him, whether the guy is a trustworthy Jew or not. This is very problematic because every Jew has a cheskas kashrus, has an assumption of kosher. We assume every Jew is innocent until proven guilty. Every Jew has a cheskes kashrus. So what does this mean that they don't know who the witness is? Who cares? He's Jewish. The Gemara is going to tackle this in a minute. Mishalchin oimai acha leida. Court will sentence him with another to testify about it. Okay? In other words, in the town where he saw the moon and it's going, they'll send somebody else to testify about it. The Mishnah explains. Very in the beginning, they accepted testimony regarding the new moon from any Jewish man because, like I said, all Jews have a din of a cheskas kashrus, kosher. Shekikilu habaitusin. But when the baitusin disrupted the process because of what I said before regarding the Omer, they thought that the Omer had to be brought not on the 16th of Nisan, the second day of Pesach, but on the Sunday after Pesach. So they would try to manipulate the calendar that Pesach would fall out on Shabbos, the first day of Pesach would fall out on Shabbos, so that the second day would coincide with their Sunday with the bringing of the Omer. So Hitiknu, they what it Hitiknu, Shulayin, the Kablan element of Akirin, the Chachamim established they would only accept those testimony from those who were known, trustworthy, and loyal. Says the Gemara, my acher, what does this mean? That the Bezdin in the town or from where the guy was coming would send another person with him to testify that he's a good guy. God, normally it means that they would send along one other confirming witness. So in other words, the witness who saw the moon and another witness as a character reference. If that's the case, says the Gemara, now we're on Amid Beis, Chabeis Amid Beis, Chabeis Amid Beis, the Chad Mahani, we're on 22b1, 22b1, the Chad Mahani, but is one aid believable when he vouches for another person? Tanya, we learn, Maisa, there was a story, Shabahu ve'edav imai, that he, the new moon witness, came confronted Sanhedrin on the Shabbos with a character witness. Lahayid Allah, Lahayid Allah. You'll notice the words when it says ve'edav imai, what he called his witnesses. In other words, he came along with two character witnesses, not one character witness. You're right. My acher. What does it mean that they would send another with him as a character witness? Sug acher means a pair of witnesses. They would send two witnesses to testify about his character. And hochanami mistabra. That makes more sense. The Eloi Temachi, because if you did not say that, and say only that they send along one individual as a character witness, im Eina Makir Oisai, if they did not know him, my Oisai. Who's the Oisai? What does that mean that Bezdin did not know him? If you say it means him, it means the witness who saw the new moon, but is the one witness believed when he testifies alone about the moon? We don't accept just one person's witness testimony regarding the moon. Mishpat kasibu. It says judgment. In other words, just like judgments in civil matters, in monetary cases, and certainly capital cases, you have to have al shnayim eidim yokum adavra on the testimony of two witnesses. The thing will stand. The legalese doesn't work with just one witness, right? You need to be based at least on two witnesses. Elamai oisai. So then, what does the oisai mean? Oisai zug. It means a pair of witnesses. Achanami mayacher zug acher. A pair of witnesses that came to testify on his behalf as a character witness. But is it fact and true that one witness is not believed in regard to confirming the righteousness of another witness? But Tanya, we learn Maisa, another story with Rabbi Narai, Shaholach Eitzel Ha'aid, that he went on the Shabbos, that he went on Shabbos in the place of the witness in Usha to testify about it. This was the case during the Churban Bayis Sheni, where the Sanhedrin ended up in 10 different places. along this. So they had to keep running from place to place to get away from the persecution of the Romans. One of the places famously was in Usha. So you see that he himself came to testify on the character of a witness. So you only need was only one witness, one character witness. So you see only one character witness is needed. Amri, so we said Ram Nahari, Sade Akrina Abibade. The case of Ram Nahari, another witness was with him when he came to Usha. And the reason why the Tana does not mention the other witness that came along around Nehemiah, in order to testify for another on another's character. We said, out of respect to Rav Naharai, we only mention Rav Naharai because he was a Gadol Adar. Rav Ashi says, no, Rabbi Naharai, Sada, Akrina Abibuusha. In the case of Rav Naharai, another character witness was already in Usha. And the Rabbi Yawai went to join him in order to create two character witnesses. So you see that you still need two character witnesses. 22b2. 22b2. So then in that case, what's the big deal? What are you telling me? That he went from Usha on the Shabbos? Obviously, because he had to go in order to be part of to help give a character witness for the witness who saw the moon. The same element of thought. Misheko, loy mechalin Shabbato. On the basis of a doubt, we do not desecrate the Shabbos. We would not allow a confirming witness, a witness that's just coming to confirm a person's character, to break the Shabbos without knowing for sure that he would be joined by a second witness. Listen, he knew that there was another witness there, but that doesn't mean that he knew that other witness was acceptable or even was available, etc. Kamash Malon comes to Tana and says, you don't make such cheshbonos. If you know that you're needed as a character witness, and you know that there are others, another is there to help with the character, you definitely have to go and be Mechal Shabbos to go and testify on his behalf. Ki also Ula, when Ula came to Bavel from Eretz Yisrael, Oma Kedushin Liyarcha b'Marava. They've sanctified the new month in the west. In other words, he reported to the Jews which day Bezdin in Eretz Yisrael had declared Rosh Chodesh for that month, either on the 30th or the 31st. Amarav Kahano Loimi Boyer Ula de Gavar Rabba Hu de Mehemna. Needless to say that Ula, who's a Gavar Rabba, who's a Gadol Adar, is believed when he says the Bezdin sanctified the new month. Elafilu Inchi Ba'alma Nami Mehni. But any ordinary person is believed to say that Bezdin established the month either the 39th day, or either the 30th day or the 31st day. My Tama, why they believed in such a manner when it comes to testimony regarding seeing the new moon. It's not trusted. You need corresponding character witnesses. Here you don't. To say that Bezdin already established the month, and this is when they established it. Because people do not lie about things that are likely to become revealed. Since when Bezdin established the month has already been clearly announced in Eretz Yisrael, eventually that information is going to come to Bubble. So this guy is not going to lie now about something that's already in the world, that's already been established in the world, and it's clear that you can be caught out in your lie. If somebody comes from the far end of the earth, that money is believed. And again, the same idea it is. This is a practical advice. That while something is still in a state of doubt and requires establishing, there you need character witnesses. Once it's been established, it hasn't been sent by WhatsApp throughout the world, you can assume people are not going to lie about it because their lie will become apparent very quickly. Says the Mishnah, we can stop. Let's see if we can get to the Mishnah. Okay, we got about 4 more minutes here. Originally, they would accept testimony about the new moon from anyone because all Jews have a cheskes kashrus, an assumption of holiness, an assumption of kosher. Then the Baitusim came along because, as I explained, the Omer, which is brought on the 16th of Nisan, they believe had to be brought on Mimocharas HaShabbos, on the day after the Shabbos, without recognizing that over there it's talking about Shabbos as the first day of Pesach, not Shabbos itself. They thought the Omer had to be brought on the first Sunday after Pesach. So what's going on? Tanu Rabbanan. Ma kilkulu kilku Baitusim. What did they do? Pamachas. One time, Bikshu by Tusim Lahate says they attempted to deceive the saints regarding sanctifying the Rosh Chodesh on the wrong day in order to shift the first day of Pesach to Shabbos, so that the second day of Pesach would fall out on Sunday, which is when they said the Omer is really supposed to be brought. When in fact, the Pesach should have fallen out on Friday or on Thursday or whatever it is. So we're on 22b3. 22b3. Sachru Shnei B'nei Adam Abimei Zuz. They hired two people for a total of 400 zuz. Achad Mishalai v'Achad Mishalahen. But it turned out one of them was ours and one of them was their own. One of them belonged to the Baitusim, was a Baitusi Chassid, and what do you call it? One of them was secretly a chassid of the Rabbana, of the rabbi. So their witness, the one that was their guy, presented his testimony before Bezdin had left. Shalanu Amrullah, the witness that was one of ours, came to give his testimony before Bezdin. They said to him, Amo, tell us, how did you see the moon? Amalahan, Ayla Yisin Kemala Adum. I was going up to Mala Aduma. You see that even today, even back then, there was a Mala Aduma. Okay? And I saw the moon crouching between two rocks. Its head resembling a cat. Its ears resembling a kid. Its horns resembling a deer. Was there no in the Nuchas Loibain? And its tail between its legs. It's at boy, and I looked at it when near Sati, when about and was startled and fell backward. And if you don't believe me, Hare Masayim Zuz Saruni Legasidini. Here's the 200 zuz bundled in my cloak that I was given to offer you this testimony. How did you get involved in this? Obviously, something's going on here. I heard that the Baitusim wanted to deceive the sages. I said to myself, I will go and let them know my willingness to testify falsely for them, lest they only find non-worthy people, the Toas Chachamim, and fool the Chachamim. Amrullah, they said to him, the 200 zuz are given to you as a present. Now, how can he take it? The truth of the matter is, who gave him the money? The Baitusim. He didn't do what the Baitusim wanted him to do, which is falsify his testimonies. How can he keep the money? But the answer is, Bezdin has the power when to do Hefker, Bezdin, Hefker. Ownerless, Bezdin has the right to make things ownerless. So what did they do? They said, this was a completely illegal activity. We're taking that money and we're making it ownerless. And now we're giving it to you as a present because of your honesty. And the one who hired you should be stretched out on the post to be flogged. And at that hour they instituted. From that point on, we could only accept testimony from trustworthy and loyal Jews. And from that point on, people needed to come with character witnesses. And the idea of a cheskes kashrus, that all Jews are considered kosher, unfortunately fell away. And to this day, we still, of course, deal with this problem that people have their own agendas and they don't look at the overall good for the Jewish people sometimes. Very good. We are up to the Mishnah here on the bottom of Chabez.